I think we're live.
We're live!
Woo!
Well, a couple of minutes. Oh no, Emma!
Uh-oh, this is not a great start.
It wouldn't be a live show without the first opening moments of technical difficulties. So.
There would not, yeah, no. Oh, there she is.
I'm such an idiot. I'm so stupid.
What happened?
I legitimately accidentally X'd out of the whole time.
Alright, I am tweeting. Here's the link.
Yes, I'm tweeting at the link too.
Okay.
Your questions. Should everyone go down the line and introduce themselves?
Yeah, do we want to give people a minute to join? I feel like no one's probably here yet. Oh, we have 6 people here. Hello, 6
viewers. Alrighty. Just so everyone knows, the Q&A app is open, and you can send us questions that you want us to answer and just join in on the discussion on hashtag ACOMAF Live, or ACOMAF. Some people pronounce it differently. Right? Is it ACOMAF or ACOMAF?
ACOMAF?
I don't think I've ever said it. ACOMAF?
I feel like everyone on BookTube says ACOMAF. But you can send us questions and join in on our topics on hashtag ACOMAF Live. So, do we want to go down the line? Like, Monica, what is your line?
Sure. Hey, everybody who has joined. I'm Monica. This is my channel, Monica, and we're here today to discuss A Court of Mist and Fury, the sequel to A Court of Thorns and Roses. Quick warning that we are going to be discussing the full book, so here there be spoilers. And yeah, I guess I'll just leave it up to you guys to introduce yourselves too.
Is there an order we want to follow, or just?
Who wants to go first? Mari, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Marines. That's actually my channel name as well. My name is Marines. Just to give you a little bit of background to where I'm coming at for this book, I read A Court of Thorns and Roses last year. I gave it 1 star, and that 1-star review is like my most popular video on YouTube. In that video, I swore I would never read the second book, but here I am.
There you are.
Next, Emma, I tag you. Go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Emma from Emma Books. That's my channel with 3 M's, not 2. Are we going to go over our general thoughts now, or are we going to wait till everyone introduces themselves?
You can do it now. I'll just go after Liz.
So I really enjoyed this book, but I have so many issues with it, so I don't really know if I actually like it or not. Like, there were certain things that I, really, really enjoyed, but there are so many issues that I just have, nitpicking with the book. So I think this discussion is going to be really interesting, because I feel like we all, agree on some of the things that I nitpicked on. So, Liz, you're next.
I'm Liz, and I'm from Liz Loves Literature, and I hated the first book. I didn't hate it, but I didn't enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And this book, I reluctantly liked it a lot. I mean, I know all the problems with it, and it's like a book that I love to hate, but at the same time, I think I love. I don't know. So.
I think you understand my feelings completely. Yeah. And what were your feelings?
Yeah, I think I feel very similar to Liz and you. I read the first book, and similar to Mari, was like, I am never going to read this sequel. I hate these characters. I hate this plot. And then everyone went crazy over A Court of Mist and Fury, and I'm like, well, I have to know. I can't be left out of this. So I read it, and I loved it. But, my Goodreads review for it is literally, is this book good? No. Do I love it? I know that there's problems with it, but for some reason, it captured me.
So I'm your resident. I straight out just hated it on this live show. I will try and contain as many of those feelings.
Don't contain them. Don't contain them.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I just don't want to be the person that's like, well, that's interesting, but you're wrong. But I really hated it that much. Like, it's gonna be hard for me to discuss what is good about it because I just didn't find a lot of redeeming qualities. So I think we've got a nice mix of like enjoying it to like knowing it's problematic to like me just thinking it was bad. So I think it should be a pretty interesting discussion.
No, and I think it'll be really great because I feel like 90% of the live shows I watch on BookTube, everyone either like they all love it or they all have the same feelings on it. So I'm like, I feel like this is one of the first live shows I've done about a book where like there's like a lot of like different opinions on it. So I think it's going to call for a very, very interesting discussion. Is there anything else you want to talk about before jumping like right into spoilers?
I'm curious just before we start the discussion about your ratings. Like, what did you rate the book overall?
I gave it 4 stars, and I gave the last one. In my head, I gave it 2 stars, but when I went back on Goodreads, I had given it 3. So
I gotta check. I don't remember what I gave it.
I gave it 5 stars, but my rating system is so messed up that like I don't even know what that means anymore. I think I rated it mostly on my like general enjoyment of the book, because I really did have like a lot of fun reading it, and like it was one of those books that like I didn't want to put down. But like I don't know, I feel like I'm able to recognize all the problematic parts, and there were a lot of things that I didn't like about it, but I think overall my enjoyment surpasses the things that I didn't like. So that's why I gave it 5 stars.
I mentioned that I gave ACOMAF 1 star, and I actually originally DNF'd this book a couple weeks ago. I was like, I'm not going to finish that. But then Monica invited me for the live show, so I was like, okay, maybe I'll try. Yeah. So I mostly read the last half of the book. I skim read it, but it's going to be I'll either mark it as DNF, even though I actually finished the ending, or a 1 star. Like, this is the 1 star read for me.
Mm-hmm. And Liz, do you know what you rated it?
Yeah, I just looked it up. I gave it 4 stars.
Oh, okay.
All right, so I think we can start jumping into spoilers. Is there anything about the book that any of you wanted to discuss before we...
Let me open the question. We do have one legitimate question on Twitter, so I don't know if we want to go straight for that. Oh, we have 2. We have 2 legit...
Oh.
3. We have 3 questions now. Sorry, that was coming in really fast. So we can start with those, or we can start with from some of the topics that we wanted to talk about. I don't really care.
Let's start in with these. These are actually pretty similar to what the next question in the doc is anyways, but they're a little bit spoilery, so I will give a warning that I think we're going to jump into spoilers now.
Yeah, I think this is a good time to start.
Yeah. So I think the one question, one from Joshua Blackthorn, on a scale of 1 to so much, how much do you hate Tamlin? What?
Why don't you start since you're hosting?
Sure. I hated Tamlin in the first book. I despised him, and I think I even hated him more in the first book than I did in this book, because in the first book he was portrayed, this is why I hated the first book, is because he was portrayed as like the love interest and like this good guy, and I was like, he is controlling and manipulative and awful and like such a drip of a human, like just so dull, or not a human, I guess, a fae, whatever. And so I didn't like him then. I didn't like, from the very moment that he like barged in Hagrid style into her apartment. I was like, I don't like you. You are annoying. So this book was just a lot of vindication for me.
I agree with that. I think one of the first things that I heard about the book that made me intrigued to read it was that people who had liked and defended Tamlin in the first book were saying that he was like really awful in this book. So that made me really curious, because I hated Tamlin in the first book. So I was like, ooh, what happens that now people are on like my side? And I read the second book. I'm like, this is the same shit as the first book. Like, this is like, he's not doing anything different. It's the exact same character. But something about the way that Sarah J. Maas pushes it on you in the second book, and not only pushes Tamlin's bad behavior on you, but then like very obviously highlights that Rhysand is like the good guy. I think that's why you were like unable to avoid the fact that Tamlin all along has been just just a douchebag, just not a good guy. And then she does try to cover it up with this whole thing like he's broken and, bad things happen to him, and she tries to explain it that way. But to me, it felt kind of false because, again, this was all the behavior that he was exhibiting in book 1 from the start. So, yeah, I hate him, like, pretty consistently.
I actually loved Tamlin in book 1, and luckily, as I had finished it, I had heard people saying negative things about it because I hadn't really heard any negative thoughts towards Tamlin. I've only ever heard people swooning over him. So when I first started hearing about that, I was like kind of backtracking with the book, like, oh, like, wait, what about this scene? And, oh, this happened. This was pretty manipulative and controlling. So, like, at the end of the book, I had started kind of realizing my mistake and, like, falling for how sugar-coated he was as a character. And so then I had started reading more reviews once I had finished the book, and it was like, oh, wow, this guy is an absolute shithead. And so, like, luckily, before going into the book, I had already recognized all of these things on my own, and, like, I did a lot of research on the book and read other people's negative reviews on it. So, like, I fully understood who Tamlin actually was as a character going into A Court of Mist and Fury. I only wish I had realized this sooner while I was reading the book, because I think it would have had a huge impact on how I liked A Court of Thorns and Roses. But I do agree with what you said, Rhinez. I think so many people are like, but he's a totally different character. Like, I loved him in the first book, I hated him in the second book. Like, no, he's the same person. And I totally agree that Sarah J. Maas made us hate Tamlin from, like, the first page of A Court of Mist and Fury and love Rhysand as soon as possible, and I don't like reading books where I'm forced to choose a side. You know what I mean? Like, it was definitely so much more forced, and I feel like a lot of people just didn't realize how terrible Tamlin was just because of the way that he was written and the way he's being written now. But now I, like, absolutely hate him, and I really hope he dies in the third book.
And that's what I hope, too. I was very neutral on him. Like, I didn't have any feelings any other way, really, about him. I knew in the first book I did not like Rhys at all because, like, I could see what she was doing. She's setting... I just didn't like Rhys at all. So I had more stronger feelings towards Rhys in the first book than I did towards Tamlin, even though I didn't like Tamlin, but I didn't hate him. But then by the second book, I absolutely hated him. But I also didn't like how she polishes Rhys so much in the second book to make Tamlin look like a piece of shit. So
And the thing that annoys me the most, and I'm sure we'll get into this as we discuss other elements, is that Sarah J. Maas, I think, she forces so many things on her readers. She forces tone. She forces her characters. She forces so much. And that was, more than anything else, like, that was what annoyed me with the whole Tamlin and Rhys thing. Because, like, even Rhys's beds were even more comfortable than Tamlin's. And at that point, you're like, really? Like,
I did not notice that.
Yeah, like, she's like, oh, fine, this is the best bed I've ever had, and it's just like, come on, like, we can get there by ourselves, like, what you're setting up, without having him be the best at everything, and his be better at everything, and just, like, it was too much, when she didn't have to do all of that, because we already knew that Tamlin was a jerk. Just kind of highlighting that and moving on from there would be enough, but no, his beds had to be more comfortable, and it was just, like, done at that point.
Yeah, I actually, in Liz, your review, your written review of it, it's one of my favorite reviews in the entire world. If anyone watching hasn't read Liz's review, you should get on that. It's beautiful. But I think one of the things that you highlight in there that I didn't think about when I was reading it, because it had been so long since I read A Court of Mist and Fury, so I had really forgotten about who Rhys was in the first book, and, like, how he behaved, and I liked that you brought up the fact that, like, everyone kind of has to, like, redeem themselves or has a flaw, but Rhysand. Like, he's just sort of 100% perfect in this book, like, even in his imperfections.
Yeah.
And,
I felt like everything he did in the first book, it was justified, and I don't think it should be justified. Or I feel like I felt like I already hated Reese so much in the first book, and I hated his actions, that I just don't feel like his actions were necessarily justified in the second book. Like, I felt like she tried way too hard to make he was, like I said in my review, I said he was like a martyr almost. Like, she makes him into like this like perfect angel who was perfect all along, but he's like torn and he has to pretend he's bad. I just didn't like that whole storyline.
Yeah.
I need to get this out because this is the thing that bothers me the most. This whole reasoning behind he had reasons. It's okay because he had reasons.
Yeah.
And this is my problem with a lot of redemption arcs in books because they never actually give the character redemption for me. Like, I like to view things as when a character does something to another character, I base the characters doing the negative things off of how I would see it if they were doing that to me. Like, if Rhysand had done those things to me, like, I never would have forgiven him, and that's why I don't think his actions are justified. But when we had that, like, chapter-long explanation of why he did everything, the thing that stood out to me the most is that the reason he was giving her the drink and getting her drunk every night was so she didn't remember what was under the mountain. But isn't that taking away her choice to remember?
Yeah, I had a huge problem with that.
Like, everyone's like, I hate Tamlin because he takes away Feyre's choices, and I'm like, but Rhysand did the same exact thing, and that's why you love him. I mean, he could have easily said, hey, Feyre, everything you go through is going to be really terrible. I can make you forget it. Do you want that? And she could have been, yes, Rhysand, I would love that, or no. And that would have, I wouldn't have had a problem with it, but he did the exact same thing everyone hates Tamlin for, and I'm just like, you can't just choose one because because Rhysand is more Sunni and now you hate Tamlin. You can't just justify his actions by the thing you hate the other person for, and that's what bothers me the most about the whole redemption arc.
One of the comments that I get most often, like on my bad review of the first book, is recently after the second book came out, is I have people in my comments like, no, you need to go read the second book. You don't understand, because I spoke really badly about Rhys because his actions like really made me angry at the end of the book, and especially because at the end of the first book you saw how she was setting him up as to be like the second part of the love triangle, and I was just so pissed off about that. So I was waiting for like the big thing that would make all of his actions okay, and it never came. It totally never came. It was basically the classic like abusive boyfriend line of it was for your own good. Like, it doesn't, that's not an explanation of his actions. His actions were still really crappy, but it was for her own good, and that was basically what the entire thing was. And that doesn't stop with his actions in the first book. Time and time again in this book, he would do things, and it was such a big like thing that he let her make her choices, but he kept doing things that were for her own good, like having her as bait or sending her to different places, and like she had a say in whether she wanted to go or not, but then he wouldn't give her information about it and be like, oh, sorry, that was for your own good. And that's his like repeated thing throughout this whole book, and I'm like, what? This, and it's like Emma said, it's the same thing as Tamlin, but for whatever reason, well, not for whatever reason, because Sarah J. Maas like slams it down our throat, we're okay with it when Rhys does it, but not when Tamlin does it, because Tamlin is bad now. So I mean, I don't think his actions are justified either, and I think he's also a terrible love interest.
See, the way I see it is I feel like everyone is like, Tamlin's a totally different person, but I feel like Rhysand is really the person that's completely different. Like, as I'm reading this book, I'm like, wow, I hated Rhysand so much more than I hated Tamlin because of everything he did to her, and now I'm like liking him more now, because I feel like a lot of the things he does do, like, like helping her read, although I didn't like that he was forcing her to do it, I feel like that was
for her own good.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, is like, I like that he's doing this, I don't like the reasons. I do feel like in book 2, Rhysand is such a better person for Feyre, despite those negative aspects. Like, I'm not ignoring them, I'm just saying, compared to Tamlin, I feel like the person he is with Feyre now is who he should have been in the first book, and I wouldn't have had, any problems, but it's because of the way he acted in the first book that I'm so conflicted with how I feel about him, because I'm like, I ship them. Compared to her and Tamlin, I ship them. But, like, I don't, because there's also, I can't excuse who he was in book 1, because that plays a whole role, and I can't judge him solely off of this book.
Yeah, it's like all the good things he did in the second book, like I was like, oh, this is cute, but I was like, in the back of my head, I was always like, oh, but he roofied her and like made her wear fancy clothes and like dance on her. So like it's always in the back of my mind when I'm reading this book. when I was reading
I
the
would
book.
have been like not fine with it, but I would have like accepted the second book's story arc with him a lot more if like they had just addressed it and like been angry about it, and he had like had to apologize in a way that wasn't just giving reasons for why he did it, but was like, no, this was wrong, and
like, I thought that was my only choice in the moment, but I see now that maybe there was a better way to handle that. Like, that would have been like, oh, true, good for you for noticing. But it was just like, no, we didn't get, I feel like we didn't get that, or enough of that. What we got was really just him, like, justifying his actions. And that, and coming almost from, it kind of seems condescending sometimes, the way he's like.
Because it's almost like the whole book, he's the teacher and she's the student. I wanted a scene where she was the teacher and he was the student. She's like, no, things you did in the first book.
So another question that we have from Gabriella is kind of on the same route as like characters and especially Rhysand. So which is your favorite? Rhysand?
I don't know.
I will say Rhysand a million times in this live show. I'm just warning you, but it's apparently it's Rhysand.
Okay. Rhysand is
also Ethan's books also ask the same question, just to give him a shout out.
Okay.
So you can.
So yeah, the Squad. What do we think of them? Do we love them? Do we not love them? And
I think they're what saved this book, honestly. And I think it's kind of interesting because it's so different than her other series, because there is like kind of this like comedic element with this group, which she doesn't have in the Throne of Glass series. At least I can't think of anything really, because I feel like Throne of Glass, they're so much more serious almost, and I kind of like this whole like buddy group thing we've got going on in this book.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a favorite character of the Inner Circle, because personally I just didn't feel as connected to them because they were such side characters. Despite them being involved in like a lot of the scenes, I feel like, and we do know their backstories, I just didn't feel like such a connection to them to have a favorite of the group. But I do really like the dynamic of all of them together and Tamlin, and like I remember one of the first scenes that like really captured me was like, oh, I'm enjoying this, was when they were all sitting around, I think they were sitting around for dinner, and like they were just telling the story of how they went to the camp and like all of that. So I think they have a really good dynamic, and I think it does add a lot to the book for it not just to be this love triangle and for there to be intricate characters within it. So I really like them. I just don't have a favorite.
Yeah, I was really excited for Feyre to have female friends.
Yes!
That was like, I was so excited for that, especially because when, I forget her name. Who's his?
Anthe?
Which one?
Are you talking about Anthe or no?
No, the other one.
More,
yeah. When she was first introduced, my initial thought was that she would be sort of that trope of the
ex-girlfriend.
Yeah. And so I was really happy that like that just didn't exist, and it was just no, these are her friends now, and one of them's a little kooky, but it works. So.
I was pretty indifferent to them. Like I said, there's like nothing here that I liked. They weren't terrible characters, but I thought that they were really side characters, and portion of that is because everything about the story is filtered through the point of view of Feyre, and I hate Feyre. And also, like, the way she describes things, and like her focus was not so much on them as characters. Like, she would kind of describe them a little bit, but her focus was always pulled by, what Rhys was wearing and what he was doing and if he was smirking. So we got them in a very kind of superficial way, which sucked because they probably could have been, okay, I guess. Sorry, that's about as like positive as I can get about this book.
Well, it's kind of like, it's like the curse of like, for me at least, like an example would be like the Vampire Diaries, where I loved all the side characters, but I had no feelings really about the main characters, like Elena and all of them. Like, I never really cared about her and her little love triangle. I always care about like the side characters in the background because I always find them a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like that's such a common feeling among like readers. Like, it's always like the side characters and the side couples that get like so much hype compared to like the main characters. Because I guess we focus so much on the main characters, and after a while, like certain mannerisms and behaviors of them get so annoying.
Yeah.
And I feel like the side characters are just like always good. so it's so
It's
much
like-
easier to like them.
You spend more time with the main character, so that means
Yeah.
that you have more time to find them annoying or
Exactly.
whatever.
True.
Like when you see a friend too often, and after a while, you just can't hang out with them anymore. I mean,
We need a break.
So another question we have. What? Oh.
And I was going to ask if you had another question that you wanted to include.
Oh yeah. Camilla. Am I echoing?
I think someone's is too loud.
All right. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I was last. So Milla is wondering about. So there's this theory basically that the two stories, Throne of Glass and A Court of Mist and Fury, overlap. Well, I guess Sarah J. Maas said they're in the same universe. It's related. I was actually talking to Jenna at MFK, and she mentioned the idea that, like, and I know a lot of people have this theory that Amryn is part of the Throne of Glass world, that she is like a creature from that world.
That who is?
Amryn.
Amryn.
Oh, okay.
And so I was wondering what your thoughts on that overlap is, and how you think it might play out.
In all honesty, I read Throne of Glass a really long time ago when I was in a slump, so I remember like virtually nothing other than book one. So I don't know how much input I can really have on this question, but I don't know. I feel like I view them so differently.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're on like to me they seem like totally different universes. So I don't know how many similarities I can really find between the two of them that would make me actually believe that it's from the same universe.
That, like, theory blew my mind, because I could see that, like, as Amryn as, like, this, like, key between, like, they're in two separate universes, so they don't have really any similarities, but, like, Amryn could be, like, just, like, this little connection, and I kind of like that idea, but I don't know if it's true or not. I don't really know.
I only read the first book, Throne of Glass, and I hated that one too. So.
Oh, I hate Throne of Glass, too. Like, I don't know, she does a really bad job at her first books.
I'm wondering, like, do you think, like, how do you think it would become canon that it was really, like, connected? Like, if Amryn was actually this link between the two, do you think that would be, like, first said in one of the Throne of Glass books or one of the A Court of Thorn and Roses books? And, like, I don't know, I'm just wondering, like, how it would actually connect in canon rather than Sarah J. Maas sending out a tweet one day that said, like, oh, Amryn's
my thing would be maybe, like, I feel like she would, my theory would be that Amryn would, if someone's really loud, because I can, like, still hear someone's.
Is it me?
It's hard to concentrate. But maybe, like, she would finish, because this series is only, it's a trilogy, right? There's only 3?
Yeah.
I think so.
So, like, she would finish this one, and maybe Amryn would leave. But I don't know if she'd be a good guy or a bad guy. So I don't know.
It'd be fun if she was a bad guy.
I could see it being revealed, like maybe just in Throne of Glass, randomly mentioning Amryn, like in a throwaway kind of way, so that it's an Easter egg, or vice versa.
I don't think
like
it would
that.
actually be like a story arc. It'd just be like an Easter egg.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went to get headphones because 90% of the time if there's an issue with audio, for some reason it's me, so this is a problem.
No. If that doesn't fix it, then we know that it's me. So one question that I had, and then I'll hop back into everyone else's questions. So one thing that I think that this book actually does, this series does really well, is discussing sex, and particularly the fact that Feyre, when you start it, isn't a virgin, and it's not like this awful thing that she isn't a virgin, and it's like, it's just sort of like, yeah, she just does what she does and it's fine, and I thought that was actually really cool. And there was one scene in particular that like stood out to me, where it was the Court of Nightmares scene where she's like sitting on his lap, and he has this moment where like he can tell that she is very, like, she's aroused, but he like is like, I know that this doesn't mean anything. Like, he says that, like, this doesn't mean anything, like, you still have say here, and like the scene itself is like troublesome in the first place, but that line I thought was weirdly really progressive. I mean, maybe not weirdly, but was like progressive in like just saying that like that doesn't mean anything. It's not consent. It's still her choice. And I thought that that was kind of well done throughout the story.
No, I totally agree. I really, really like how sex is portrayed in this book. I don't know. I've heard like mixed things if it's actually YA or NA because Feyre's 19. I hear like really, really mixed things, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, like this is like 50 Shades of Grey. How is this YA?" But I don't really know if it's YA or NA because it does feel more like YA, but the age range doesn't match up with YA. It's confusing. But I really do like how sex is portrayed because I feel like sex in YA is the same story every single time, and it was just so nice to find a character who just enjoys doing sexual things, and like it doesn't have to mean something so much. Like the first guy in the beginning of the book, like they're not anything like completely serious, right? I could be mistaken, but like the first person she's involved with, it's like very casual, and that's not something we really ever see in books. It's always like life or death with the one true love. So I think like you said, Monica, I think it is really, really progressive in that respect.
And just kind of jumping off from that, one of the things that I can say positive, but that I think that was done better in theory rather in practice, was this idea that that Feyre fell in love, but then she's like, wait, maybe I did that too quickly, and the idea that you can fall in love and then move on from that.
Yeah.
That there, like, you don't have just like a one true love. Like, there's things that happen in your life and different times in your life and different circumstances, and that she was able to look back and say, okay, I did love him, and I mean, I sacrificed myself from him, but I'm not that person anymore, and I can move on. I really think we don't see enough of that narrative in fiction, is that, you know, you can love different people across your life, and I really enjoyed it. One of the things that hampered it for me was that this was happening across months instead of like any normal timeline, but that was a really neat thing that I saw, that I thought was discussed in the story.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I had never thought about it really, but I totally agree with you. It's not like a la Bella who like jumps off a cliff, so she like still retains her own self, and she learns from that relationship, even though she does hop right back into another relationship. But yeah, I really like that.
No, I do like that she does admit that she continues to say that she was in love with Tamlin and recognizes that, because I feel like a lot of times when there is a love triangle and somebody jumps ship, it's like, no, I didn't love this person, like, it was all in my head, like, you know, I don't know what I ever saw on them, and Feyre just, like, accepts the fact that this is what happened, like, getting involved with him was a mistake, and it had that severe impact on me, but that doesn't mean that it negates anything that I felt at that time, and I think that's a really, really important concept.
So another question we have is from Gabriella, and she's asking specifically about Lucian. What are your thoughts on him not standing up for Feyre? What are your thoughts on his character? Where do you think he's going to go in the next book?
I'm disappointed because I was really holding out for Lucian to become a love interest instead of Tamlin and Reason. So, like, that kind of killed it for me. I was upset. I think I imagined Lucian and Feyre's relationship to be a lot better than it was. So, like, that's why it came as a shock to me, because I guess I just really wanted Feyre to have someone in, like, throughout A Court of Thorns and Roses that, like, she could really, like, have a friend, and I think I just really overplayed their relationship in my head, so that's why I was so shocked. But, I mean, now he's just, like, on the same side as Tamlin to me, so I don't really like him anymore.
He's going to have to make some tough choices in the next book now that he's in love with her sister.
Oh God, don't even get me started on that.
That gave me such an imprinting vibe, now that we already spoke about Camilla and Twilight. Like, it was like such an imprinting vibe. I was like, where the hell did
like,
that
I felt like there was no mention of imprinting in the first, and then all of a sudden it's like, you get an imprint, you get an imprint. Okay.
Yeah, it's supposed to be this very rare thing, but apparently not.
No, imprinting was my absolute first thought, so I'm so glad.
Kind of diverting off of that in a similar lane, what are your thoughts on her sisters? Like, do you think that they're redeemed in this book? Do you like them more?
I like them as their, like, own. I mean, I like, what's the older sister's name? Nessa. I kind of like her vibe, but I don't like her in relationship to her relationship with her sister, because I feel like, did they ever say sorry? Like, sorry, we just kind of, like, gave you all this responsibility and made you do all these things for us all these years. Like, I really hope there's some kind of scene like that in the third book. Like, I hope she, like, yells at them or something, because I don't feel like they've been redeemed at all. We just kind of made them into Fae, and that's pretty much it.
It's kind of a theme with this book that nobody really is taking any kind of responsibility for their actions. It's just like, and even when we first go to their house and Feyre is like making excuses for her sisters, like, oh, this is just the way they are, like this is how she is, kind of thing. So it's never like a thing like, yeah, this person acted badly and, you know, they should say sorry. It's just excuses for the way that everybody is, and I think that totally applies to the sisters as well.
Yeah. My thoughts are like, at least Nesta, like, owns who she is. Like, she's mean, and she, like, owns it, and that's her through and through, and she's fine with it. I can't stand the other one.
Yeah. She's like, oh, I don't know what's going on.
Like, she frustrates me even more because she's supposed to be the nice one and supposed to know, like, what they're doing to her sister is wrong, and she's, like, too weak, or I don't know. I didn't get it.
No, I totally agree. I think Elena's a really weak character because when I listened to A Court of Thorns and Roses, I was listening to the audiobook, and so I guess I missed their ages, but I thought Elaine was like 8 because that was just the way she acted. Like she was, I really thought she was like a really young child. So I definitely agree with you. I think she definitely, out of Nesta and Elaine, I do like Nesta better because I feel like she does own who she is, and she doesn't pretend to be anything that she's not. She doesn't, like, put up a facade. Like, she's straight up with you about who she is, even though she's not the most likable character. I do feel that they're on their way to, not necessarily redemption, but I feel like this book was a nice, slow leeway into possibly forming a better relationship because, like, you know, when... You know, they accept the Fae into their house. They don't do it willingly, but they do, and I feel like that's a step. And I feel like a lot of the interactions they had were making it, you know, closer to a way that they could start accepting Feyre and accepting the life that she's a part of and now they're a part of. And I do have to admit, I was really, really shocked when they turned into Fae. Like, I thought it was like a total plot twist. I was kind of, they were such side characters to me, so it never really crossed my mind that they could become so involved in the story, and so I think it is definitely really interesting to see like how that's going to play out in book 2, and like if their relationship really is going to change. Like I feel like it's starting to.
Yeah, I'll definitely be interested to see what they're like as Fae.
Same. Although that whole scene, I was like, why is everyone so upset? Like he just made your sister immortal.
I kind of had a feeling it was coming from the moment that the one dude, I forget his name now, was kind of lusting over Nesta and like making eyes at her. I was like, this chick is not gonna stay human.
Yeah, especially because she was like so anti-Fae. So those are always the ones.
Yeah.
Get turned into whatever. So there's one question here. This one is actually specifically for Emma, from Stephen Herondale. I hope I said that right. And so she's asking, I know, Emma, you've talked in the past about how Feyre handles her PTSD and your issues with that. So I don't know if you want to like dive into some of that.
I do want to explain this first because I feel like if it's not properly understood, I can get like a lot of negative backlash for it. So basically, I was talking about how in the beginning of the book I was so miserable reading it because it was unpleasant to read at the beginning. Like I know, Marianne, you're probably like, this whole book was unpleasant for me, but I feel like in the beginning it's so like unbearable to read. Like I was just like pulling my brains out, and it's because I feel like there is this trope of the miserable protagonist, and I feel like because of all of the effects in book 1, in the beginning of book 2 of any series, there's always the main character is always just so unbelievably depressed, and it's understandable that they're depressed. I'm not like negating Feyre's feelings, and I'm not trying to minimize her experiences. I'm just saying I feel like there is this common theme through YA that the protagonist has to be so unbelievably depressed, and like that's the only thing that matters in the beginning of the book, and then they're like inevitably saved by the male protagonist. And so I was just talking about how I really wish, like I feel like we had a really great opportunity for Sarah J. Maas to show mental illness in a different light and not just have it be this is saved by romance and that this person has to, you know, crumble under the pressure of mental illness. And as somebody who is a survivor of mental illness, I think this is just like my own experiences talking as somebody who has found other ways to deal with it. I just thought it was a really great opportunity for Sarah J. Maas to like allow Feyre to take her painting as something that she loved and was really important to her in a past life when she was dealing with unbearable stress. I thought it would have been really, really great to see Feyre paint again and to see her, you know, just show something different about mental illness in YA, but that was what I was really hoping for, so I was just very disappointed by it. And so, like, when I was talking about, like, hobbies on my channel, that was something that came up. But it's not that I think it's unreasonable for the way that they reacted. It's not that I'm trying to say that her experiences don't call for her reactions to it. It's just I just wanted something different and something more from how it was portrayed. And so, like, I do understand somebody pointed out that, like, the painting reminded her of Tamlin, and how, like, Tamlin, like, had always given her paints, and that was not something she wanted to be associated with, and how when she would paint with red, it would remind her of blood. I fully understand all of this, but I just wanted something more, and it not just to be the same story I've read a million times about the girl suffering from PTSD and mental illness.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you guys felt about the beginning, but that's how I felt.
I can definitely agree with that. I think, like, for me, I kind of wanted her more so to find her own strength first, or instead of having Rhysand have to force it from her. You know?
I had issues with the beginning as well. I thought that it was very painful to read as well. Part of it was done purposefully, I think, by the author, because we're supposed to be in Feyre's trauma, and that's not going to be a comfortable place to be. Part of it, I think, was done not purposefully, and it's just like painful writing and things like that. So I went back and forth about this whole PTSD thing, and one thing that I did not really like was. Damn it, I lost my train of thought completely. We were talking about PTSD. Oh, crap. Yeah, it'll come back to me, so somebody else say.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say, I think the execution of the symptoms of these disorders were done so perfectly. Like, I loved how consistent a lot of the flashbacks were for most of the book. I think she did an accurate representation of strictly a disorder, but I wish the execution of how handling it can go for some people was different. But I totally understand what you're saying. Like, I think we are meant to feel uncomfortable, and we are meant to be upset by it. I just wish there was something that, like, would have made it a little bit more bearable.
Oh, okay, so what I was going to say was that one of my problems with it was that I know that Feyre went through, like, a bad time under the mountain, and she, like, died, and she killed people, and that was where, like, you know, that all of that was coming from, but I thought she was such, like, a little pain in the butt about not understanding that other people had experienced the same thing as her, and for, like, more years. It was like 50 years that this villain was in power, and she spent, like, a week or whatever it was under the mountain, and I know that was very traumatizing for her, but she was so condescending to the other people that she met who felt like, you know, Feyre was a savior, and that was uncomfortable for her, but she was also, like, really mean to those people, and really condescending, and really, like, she pushed them away, and that whole thing really left a bad taste in my mouth, because it's like, dude, I understand it was tough for you, but you were like a slave for a week. These people were slaves for 50 years. Like, you know, that kind of thing left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. And then, again, like, just to repeat what Emma was saying, the whole idea that this story doesn't exist in a vacuum. And even though it might make sense for Feyre, it doesn't really take away from the fact that it's super tropey, and we too often see these super depressed YA and NA heroines who are saved by the male lead characters. And I think a lot of the strength that Feyre talks about, or that other people put onto Feyre, is not something that we really see in action. Like, people are like, "You're so strong, Feyre," but I don't really think we got a sense of how strong she actually was when, like, the male is swooping in to save her time and time again.
Yeah, because you actually don't see her, like, I don't really believe that she got better on her own, because he's always there. He's always a presence. He's always telling her, like, there's times when he's telling her, oh, Tamlin was horrible to you, or, oh, the things you went through are horrible. I wish she, at times, would realize that on her own, and she's not comparing her relationship with Tamlin to Rhys. I wish she had just found it out on her own, and I felt like he was such a huge influence on her development, and
Yeah, I had somebody comment on that video where I first mentioned it. They were like, I think Feyre did it all on her own, and I was like, personally, I don't agree with that, because everything that happens since she enters the Night Court the first time is because Rhysand is telling her to do it and pushing her to do that, and I'm really grateful that Rhysand was a wall of support for her, and he was very supportive of her getting better and wanted her to get better. And I know we're going back to the thing where he's doing everything that he thinks is best for her. But well, I feel like despite his actions not being ideal, I do think his intentions for getting her to a better place, like strictly just that, were really good. And I liked that. But I don't like how I feel like at some points she was like dependent on him for getting better, and I feel like had she not spent all that time with him, she would have been in the same place. Even if she was away from Tamlin, I don't think she would have grown at the pace that she did if Rhysand wasn't the one who was constantly telling her to learn how to read and telling her that she can do this and making her do that. It's like I wish she had realized something on her own and was able to grow on her own.
That is so much highlighted by the way that we see that, like, the first interactions are of Rhys stealing her away from Tamlin, and it works out well because through that she gets to see who Tamlin really is, and she kind of grows into her own person, but it doesn't really take away the fact that he, like, grabs her and just takes her away, like, whenever he wants, and, like, but yay, it worked out well for you, like, kidnapping, like, worked in your favor, like, congratulations. And that's, like, the entire feeling of this book is, like, you know, congratulations, this abusive kind of jerky thing.
And it's not a great thing to put out there, like the idea of a guy saying, like, because in real life you don't have like connections through like your belly or whatever is going on with him, like you don't have that. So if a guy was to like take you away from your wedding and say, I knew this is what you wanted, like you wouldn't want that in real life. And I don't know, it's just not a good like message to give off, like, oh, he knows what she wants.
Yeah, I was so conflicted with Rhys because I will sit there and I'm like, you are so problematic. I love you.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like, I don't know how many of you have read Shattermate, because I feel like that's the only book I've read that really compares to having like this total forced change of ship. But it was like that, but like 10 times million, because I do like Warner much better than I like Adam, for those of you who have read it. I mean, I don't think I'm spoiling anyone because I think everyone has heard that everyone fawns over Warner. But it was like this.
If you know Whitney, you know.
Yeah, if you know Whitney, you know. But I feel like it was like a million times that conflict of getting to know a character in a certain light and then having it shifted so you're meant to like them. So I think I totally agree with you that he's like so problematic, but I can't help but like you right now.
I think it was Connor, as we were talking about this book. I don't know that he's read it, Connor from Connor O'Brien, but we were talking about like the switch between Tamlin and Rhys, and he was like, oh, so he got Maffied. So like being Maffied is like like that switch and shit. So now you have a term for it.
That's amazing.
So we have another question from Abby, who is asking, why does Rhys pretend to be a dick in front of the other courts? I don't understand why he pretends to have an evil vibe. And I kind of get this too. Like I understood that he wants to protect his court, but I was just like, I kind of got like some Will Herondale vibes from him.
Oh my god, yeah.
At least Will like thought that other people like were legitimately going to die if he was nice to them. I'm sorry, was that a spoiler? Like,
I'm never gonna read it.
You're fine. Yeah, I was like, I feel like I have to read it. You're fine.
You're not for a long time. It's like spoiling the end of Harry Potter.
Exactly.
But anyways, I feel like, I don't know, I just like didn't fully buy, because all the other courts are able to like exist as normal human beings in normal courts without being...
I don't know how him being like not so dickish would like show the what's the name of the city? I don't even...
Valera? No.
Valera?
Valera. I don't know if I'm confusing it with the Savage Song. I think it's Valera.
I don't remember. I just don't know how that correlates really. Like,
yeah.
I don't understand that.
Going back to the scene where she's on his lap and it's kind of problematic or whatever, I understand that it was supposed to be like a distraction tactic, but honestly, that's the only distraction tactic.
That's the only thing you can think of?
Like, you command night and, like, shadows, and you're like, what can we do? I know.
That bothered me a lot, too.
Yeah, so it's like his whole reasoning for doing things. Like, I get that he thinks that there's a reason behind it, but at the same time, honestly, this is, like, the only way you can come up with to protect your people, whatever. It just doesn't ring true to me.
Yeah.
I feel the same exact way. One thing I want to talk about that we haven't asked about yet, but I want to make sure we talk about it, like, and don't forget about it, is how do you guys feel about the ending, like, with the High Lady and the tattoo and all of those things? I just want to know how everyone feels, because I think the ending was my favorite part of the whole book.
Yeah, I liked the ending.
Yeah, I just like it. I feel like with her like that smile that she does at Lucian, I was like, she's gonna kill you all, and I'm so excited.
Yeah. I mean, I was just like, that was not a thing that I was imagining. Like, I like, as soon as we got to Teresa's perspective, I was like, hold on, what is going on here? And I was, like, shocked. Like, my jaw was open. I was so overwhelmed. I was reading this at work, like, 9 o'clock at night. And I don't know. The one thing I really liked about it is it was so unexpected for me. Like, that was, like, a really, really good plot twist, in my opinion, was to have them have, I think, were they married? Was that it? Like, whatever.
I think so.
Yeah.
It was kind of, like, married, and then, like, she became the High Lady through that, so that was, like, what was more powerful, and, like, they didn't take off the second glove, or whatever it was. Like, it was just so unexpected for me that it made me so, so excited for book 3, because, like, she's like, she's in the enemy's court. Like, if you see how overwhelmed I'm getting with it, I don't know. I just thought it was, like, a really, really great decision. I really, really enjoyed the ending.
I feel like we're gonna have some good like spy espionage
Yes.
kind of things going on in the spring court, which I think is gonna be good.
Yeah, and I love that she was like, in that scene at least, very sort of cold and calculating about the whole thing. Like, I really loved that, and my hope is that in the next book, she doesn't like water that down at all. Like, I want her to be cruel and to just do what she wants, like, needs to do. I think it might have been Paige who, like, tweeted out that when she read that scene, she had the Seven Devils song from Florence and the Machine in her head, and I'm like, yeah, that's that song. I'm like, this is what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm. I had something to say, but I don't remember what it was. Oh, really quick. Do you guys think that the last book is going to be from Rhysand and Favor's perspective because we had the one chapter?
Probably.
I think so.
How do you feel about that? Because I hate when authors do that.
I honestly hated that we got the one chapter or whatever, how many chapters at the end from his perspective. Like, if you haven't done it all book, to do it at the very end just feels kind of like a cheap ploy to me. But that would be better if it was kind of like a segue into the third book where it was going back and forth. Like, I would feel like maybe it would make it a little bit better and not just throwing out a random chapter because you needed it. Like, that would be a little cheaper than an introduction into, like, something going back and forth in the third book.
I think she'll have to do that, like, just because, like, she created good characters, like, in the Night Court, and then you have everything going on with her sisters. Like, you can't ignore that.
Yeah.
Unless she's not going to be in the spring court for very long, which then kind of defeats the purpose. So
I just hope it's done well.
Yeah.
I hate that, like, there's just, I feel like there's so many series out there where the last book is from the two perspectives, and it's like, I wouldn't have had a problem if the whole series was like this. But I do understand why it's being done. I just hope it's done well, and it doesn't bother me that, like, all of a sudden we have, like, this whole new perspective.
Yeah. My hope is that it doesn't, because I feel like Rhysand is so martyr-y when you, like, hear him talk at all throughout a lot of the book, and so I am really hopeful that, like, his entire, like, inner monologue isn't that, and just, like, be the entire time, because that would be.
Guys, I'm gonna go ahead and say that his voice is gonna just be a lot like Farrah's.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. Is Throne of God told from different perspectives at all, or no?
I can't
remember.
I can't remember. I literally read the entire series.
Yeah, I have too. Is it in first person? I can't even remember right now.
It's in.
Is it?
I feel like we've seen scenes from, like.
I mean, you definitely you see. Yeah. You see different perspectives.
Okay. Yeah. So I think it is third point of view. That's why I was wondering, because it was like, I feel like a lot of times when authors, like, do switch perspectives in books, you can usually, like, tell from, like, previous works if they're going to sound the same. But I do agree. I think I don't want to like base it off of one chapter because I feel like that's kind of unfair, but I do think it will be very similar to Fira's voice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that it won't be. It would be really great if it wouldn't, but just like
I hope they're not like mopey the whole time for each other. Like I hope they're like they have what they need to do and they're like just like kick ass. Like I hope they're not just like, oh, when will I see Reese again? Or I hope they're.
You guys are really cute with all these hopes.
the way I see it is what makes me hopeful that it's not going to be like that is I feel like at the end of book 1 they're just on such a different level with their relationship than like anyone before that I hope that they're able to set aside this need to be with each other, and because like there's no turning back at this point, and like their end game obviously, and they're so connected in a different way that I'm really hopeful that like it's just gonna be like straight like let's get this shit done.
Yeah, it's kind of refreshing to like kind of already know the end game of like the main characters. Like you don't have to like worry about that.
Do you know in Throne of Glass, like, who's the end game? Like, she's not.
I mean, she may introduce another character and then make you hate the other.
I haven't even read Queen of Shadows yet. I don't even know. But no, I agree. I think it is really refreshing that like we don't have to go through.
Like you don't have to worry about all the angst of like who does she pick? Like she's made her choice. She's obviously not gonna like make Tamlin the choice, obviously, or that would be really like. Bad.
Yeah.
I mean, not to use the word hope again, but like my hopes in this, like us knowing the end game and like Tamlin not even being an option, is that this last book isn't going to be as focused on romance as the other books, and like I'm really hopeful that it's going to just be like an intense like war. Like that's what I'm really hoping this is going to be about. I think that knowing that there's nobody else, you know, for Feyre, I'm just hoping that like it's not going to be focused on the romance as much as the other books.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, where do you think the last book is going to go? Because we have the king coming in with all of his fun stuff. There's only one.
All the stuff at the end is kind of fuzzy for me. Like I can't. Yeah. What are some things that happen?
So there's a giant cauldron. And like, I kept imagining it as like this very cartoony, weird scene. I struggled with that scene. Like I imagined literally like a 2-story giant black.
Oh my god!
Bubbling magic coming out.
See, the way I imagined it was a regular sized cauldron that was just bigger on the inside, like maybe coffin. So like they were able to throw Nesta and Elaine in, but it was like the same size. The true power of, that really shows how differently people can view things in life. But yeah, I feel like I can't even theorize for the next book. I feel like I'm usually really good at like thinking of what's gonna happen, but I feel like because I was so thrown off by this ending and it was just like a million different things were happening and so many things were introduced that I didn't expect, I'm like, I have no idea how to go off of this. I was not prepared for any.
She has a lot to wrap up in one book.
Yeah, that makes me worried.
Oh my god, this book's gonna be like
100 pages. I hope you guys know.
Yeah, it's totally gonna be. I mean, books only get longer.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not prepared for it.
Yeah, no. I'm intrigued to see though, because like we still have a few more books in Throne of Glass. So I'm excited to see how she ends the series, because my fear is that it's going to be like all happiness, you know? Like everyone gets a boyfriend at the end, and
for Throne of Glass, or
wait, are you talking about Throne of Glass or
for both? And so I'm hopeful to like see this one and like get an idea of how she ends.
How she's gonna end Throne of Glass.
Yeah.
Wait, which one? I know that we only have one more book in A Court of Mist and Fury, and after Empire of Storms, you only have one more in Throne of Glass, right?
I can't remember if it's 1 or 2.
Yeah. I think it's 6.
But it's near the end.
Yeah, I think Throne of Glass is 6 books, so Empire of Storms would be number 5, right?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So is after Empire of Storms is whatever the third book coming next, or is it like she's finishing Throne of Glass and then finishing A Court of Mist and Fury? I know it's on her website somewhere. Hold on.
I don't know.
Let's just dial her in and find out.
Please don't do that. I don't want to be in the chat. She does not need to see my Twitter feed. I know.
I'm always like slightly worried about that.
I'm interested to see if like people die. Like I feel like people are gonna die.
Yeah.
Do you think she would really?
I think she'll kill people.
Some people die. I hope the Night Sister dies.
Who?
The Night Sister, Elaine. Is that her name?
Like a sacrifice.
I hope.
Oh yeah, I hope she dies too.
She's not gonna die. She was imprinted upon.
Yeah,
Well, maybe they'll
That would
both
make
die.
it even more depressing.
Yeah. Or they both die. Yeah. I'd be okay. I mean, I'd be sad if Lucian died, but it like wouldn't be that sad about it.
Mm-hmm.
Or like one of the either Cassian or what's his name?
Azrael.
Azrael.
Something like
I keep wanting to say Aristotle. It's not.
that.
It says that the third book in A Court of Mist and Court of Thorns and Roses will be published in 2017.
Wow.
So I'm assuming around like, I don't know, maybe it's like another year
Yeah.
from when A Court of Mist and Fury came out. I guess.
Better write fast.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let me see if we have any other questions on Twitter.
Yeah, if you have any last minute questions, be sure to send them into ACOMAF Live.
We can do. Do you want to do 10 more minutes?
Yeah, sure.
So I have a question for you guys while Monica's looking. I would just be interested to hear what your favorite and least favorite thing were about the book in general.
I mean, mine's really easy. My favorite thing was the ending. I really, really enjoyed the ending of this book, but my least favorite thing was just how unbelievably problematic it is. Like, just everything with Rhysand and Tamlin and Feyre, like, they're all so problematic that it's like, that's why it's like I really, really loved this book, but I can't ignore all of the issues I have with it.
Yeah, I'd probably say the same thing. Just Rhys in general I don't really like.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I just deal with him now because I know I have to.
My favorite and least favorite are the same thing. Mine's going to be Rhys. Because I love him. At the same time, I am so mad at him and don't like him and get really frustrated with him as a character. I just feel like he could have been redeemed. Or not redeemed, but at least, like, they could have confronted a lot of his issues better than they did. And I would feel a lot better about the fact that I like really love his character.
Yeah, I feel like the whole thing about his redemption arc is like explained by like the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Like his intentions were good, but that doesn't mean that everything he did was good. You know what I mean? Like he wanted the right things, but he did not do them in the right way whatsoever. So it's not an excuse at all. And when everyone's like, he has reasons, I'm like, just because he has reasons doesn't mean he's good. People have reasons for killing people. It doesn't mean that it's good to kill people.
But I feel like that's kind of common. Like there are, I mean, even like Vampire Diaries first season.
Oh my god.
Like, that's just his character. That's not okay.
Okay, Marinus, what was your favorite thing about the book?
And
what was like the thing above all that you hated?
I mentioned before, like, what my favorite thing was, and it was just the idea of, like, Feyre moving on, like, saying, okay, I'm done, like, I did that, and I realized why I did it, but I'm done with that, and I'm moving on. My least favorite thing was the writing. I hate it. I hate her writing so much. It makes, like, a meh plot and characters, which is what I felt about them, like, even worse, because I hate reading her writing so much. I feel I just that's why I don't understand. Like there's books that you don't like that you understand why other people like it. This is one of the books that I'm like I don't understand why people like it because it's full of just not good writing. And yeah, that's what made it painful. That's why I DNF'd and that's why I had to like skim the end or whatever. It's just she needs an editor. She needs a new editor. I don't know who the editor is, but she needs a new one.
I agree. I mean, if it makes you feel any better, I love the book, and at the same time, I don't.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, that's
I don't mean to like just there's things where you're like I like this, but I didn't like this, but I know why other people did, and there's just times where you're like I don't get it, and like this is an I don't get it book for me. Not to say that you have to justify liking it or not liking it, but that's for me personally.
No, I feel like I had to do like soul searching with this book or something and figure out like why this is as much as it is. Because like even when you talk about the writing, like I loved all of your tweets about it when you talk about like,
oh my God, me too.
like dashes and things like that. And like that's the thing about like her writing is that I get so frustrated with it. Like I get so frustrated with, like in in Throne of Glass where she like constantly uses that like I let out of breath line like on every other chapter. But like for some reason like any other author, if they were to write like this consistently, I would like not be able to handle it for some reason.
But there's something about her books. I don't know why.
I don't.
And her favorite phrase from the first book was "shredded to ribbons." I wish I had made it. I counted how many times she said that. Like she said it like in the double digits in the first book alone.
In the second book, I was highlighting a lot of different things. Like she says the word gold like a ton of times.
Fighting leathers. Fighting leathers is the big one in the second book.
Sarah is always like, I could have sworn I heard him laugh. I could have sworn this. I could have sworn that. I'm like, Jesus Christ, we get it. Like, okay, fine.
Baring your teeth. That's another one that like everyone.
I have two things I want to include as we're talking. One thing that I hate, like while we're talking about her writing, is I hate how like she goes back and corrects herself. She's like, Rhysand, my Rhysand. Like we get it, we understand. Or like how often she refers to him as like my mate. I'm like, stop right there. You need to calm down.
And every time Tamlin in the first book like would purr or anything like that was like totally like it gave me the heebie-jeebies. I was like, no.
In this book, she does it too, that they're either purring or growling, or they're people who are so angry that they hiss. And I made a tweet about that, and people were like, well, they're fey and they're animalistic, but then her sisters did it. And I'm like, what now?
But like then you have to try to like picture that like in a movie. Like imagine someone purring or like hissing.
It's so bad, yeah. I feel
like a lot of times, I mean, others too will write something that sounds good as writing, but like when you realize, like when you think about their word choice, it's like, no. You know what I mean? Like I feel like there's so many things that like they write because it sounds poetic and whatnot, or like it just sounds more intricate, and I'm like, but this doesn't happen like that. Like when I hear the word growling, like I think of like a dog growling, and that's not sexy. The other thing that I wanted to say was that I feel like there was just a certain point in this book where like I was already Team Rhysand, but when they were talking about how like she used to paint stars and that was like it was a fate that she would fall for the leader of the Night Court, I'm like, I can't do these coincidences anymore.
What was it at the end where like it was actually something where like hadn't he like implanted the idea in her brain or something, or
yeah, something like that. There's I don't know. I have like I've been picking up on like a lot of coincidences in books lately, trying to read them more critically, and I just can't deal with this concept. Like at some point, it just needs to stop being about fate. Like I understand every once in a while, like we can have a couple that's fated to be in love, but after a while, when it's not fate from the beginning, and you're just adding in more things that just add more coincidences, I'm like, this is too much, and this isn't adding anything to the story for me. It's just taking away from it and making me more frustrated. I don't know. That's just I was really frustrated at how fake the fate aspects of their relationships felt to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like it was like
it wasn't so much like a choice for her.
Exactly.
It was always fated.
Yeah. I don't know. It was like it would have been, I just can't. It bothers me so much when things are just made to look like fate after the fact. That's like, okay, we get it. You chose Rhysand. Sarah J. Maas wants everyone to want Rhysand. I get it. I don't need any more than this.
Yeah.
It goes back to what I was saying about her entire style and the writing itself. Like the whole thing with the dashes is basically because Sarah J. Maas wants you to take pauses and read it the way that she wants you to read it. And her biggest sin is that she just forces everything. She forces tone. She forces the characters that she wants on you. She forces the plot the way that she wants it to go, whether it feels natural or not. Like, everything is incredibly forced, and that is why I don't like her stories.
All right, so I think that's probably a good place
Terrible place to end.
If you have any more questions, are there any final thoughts from everyone? Will you be reading book 3, Mari?
Yes, I will.
Yes. What will it be called? The Court of What and What?
Oh, no. I don't know.
I feel it's in, like, blood and something.
Oh,
Yeah,
that
probably
is a good
blood.
guess.
Yeah.
Blood and guts.
I like thinking about what the cover will be, because we have, like, the mainly red cover and the mainly blue, and I'm just wondering what the last one's going to be.
Green.
That's what I think.
Yeah, I was about to say
red,
green.
and blue are the 3 main colors always used on trilogies. Like, I remember Kat was in a video once, and she was showing how many books she had where they were trilogies that are all red, green, and blue, and it's ridiculous. I hope it's not green.
It probably will be.
Probably.
Maybe purple, because of, like, Reese's, like, eyes and wings and whatnot.
And red and blue.
Yeah. I'm going to go with A Court of Blood and Ashes. That's my
Ooh, I don't
like
have
that.
one. I'm
I
not
like that.
This is why I don't write, because I can't even think of it.
If I'm right, I feel like I should win a prize from Bloomsbury.
Well, we'll have this on the internet forever.
Let's start a
Congratulations
hashtag.
video.
Let's start a hashtag and petition if you're right. We'll be like, give Monica a prize.
So does anyone have any more final thoughts? My final thought is, despite all of these problematic issues and all of these things I didn't like about the book, I still loved it. Like, I just can't help myself.
My final thought is that this is a book that is probably best enjoyed if you're not paying too much attention to it. It's like a book that you just have to, like, read and, like, ignore. I was looking at it too closely, too critically, and there's just too much to pick apart there. So this has to be, like, a fun, fast, don't pay attention to half of what you're reading read.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's any way you could get any more enjoyment out of book 3 than what you have, or do you think, like, your feelings on this series are, like, totally set and nothing else is going to change it?
I don't think that it would change just because my main issue is with her writing style, and I can't imagine that it would change that much into book 3. And then also on top of it, like, I hate Feyre, and she's the main character, and she's not going to stop being the main character. So, like, if I would read it, it would be like a hate read thing again, but that didn't even work out so well because I, like, DNF'd it and stuff, so I'm probably done with this series.
That's okay. I will be really sad not to have your tweets.
I know, me too.
I will too.
Well, I said I wasn't going to read the second one, and I read it, so disregard.
There's a chance.
You can always do the audiobook, and then you don't have to, like, look at the dashes.
That's so true.
Good idea.
The audiobook of the first one was very good. It was the second audiobook I ever listened to, and I really enjoyed it. So you might like the audiobook better than the actual writing.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining. Thank you everyone who tuned in.
Thank you so much for watching, and thanks for having us on your channel, Monica.
Thank you.
For joining. I thought this discussion was really fun. Hopefully
I had so much fun.
Save this without we'll find out.
See you guys next year.
Yeah.
You should join even if you don't read the book. You should just join in the discussion.
Just to hear what happens.
I promise you that I will.
All right.
All right, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.